Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Feminine Frequency. Today, I am joined by Rebecca Hansen, who is a transformational coach. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So I'm excited to dive in. Rebecca, you are currently living in Rwanda, Africa. And you have an amazing story. Would you mind starting us off just by sharing a little bit more about your background and how you got here?
Absolutely. And this story can end up a little bit long. So if I start talking too much, you can just kind of break me off. Um, because also my moving to Rwanda had a lot to do with me developing into the transformational coach as well. As you can imagine, it was quite a transformative experience.
Yes.
I um, I grew up very much not knowing much about who I was or having a sense of who I was. So I would make decisions mainly based on what were other people's opinions around what I should do. So I ended up creating my life the way that, most people are urged to. You get a degree, you go get a job, and then you go chase promotions, and then you should look for, someone to marry, and you should have kids by the age of 30, and you should save up for retirement and all of these things. And it was just it wasn't really working very well for me. I kept just not being happy. And I thought finding a new job is going to help, finding a new project, moving to a new apartment is going to help. And none of it really worked for me. And I had decided that I wanted to leave Denmark. I was just thinking, I just gotta get up and move. Yeah, I gotta move to someplace very different. It wasn't enough for me to find a new country in Europe. I had to get out fully of the continent. So I thought at first I was going to move to China. I had studied Mandarin. I had studied Chinese business and history and culture. And then I worked for a Chinese company in Copenhagen for 4 years. And I kind of felt like I had enough a little bit of China at that point. And also, I wanted to have that energy of, China in the 90s, where things were just booming and going crazy and things were growing and very different and you didn't really know what was going to happen, but you just knew it was going to be big. I wanted that vibe. And then I thought, where can I get that now? And then I just thought, hey, let's go to Africa, right? I'm gonna go to Africa. That's where things are growing like crazy and we don't know where things are going, but they're moving fast.
Wow.
And I had never been to Africa, so I'm not quite sure how I got that idea. And then I was sitting on my grandmother's couch one day and she said, did you know your aunt has booked a trip to go see the gorillas in Uganda? And then I called my aunt and I was like, I'm coming with you. Just so you know, like there's no way you're gonna go see the gorillas in Uganda without me. So I'm coming. And there was a lot going on between where we were and how to make that happen. But we made it happen. And we were
That's
on this
awesome.
incredible trip. Yeah, it really was. We were on this incredible trip. We went to trek with the chimpanzees. We saw the gorillas at the volcanoes. We saw lions and hippos and crocodiles and elephants and drove around this incredible, incredible country. And then we
In the
had,
Sorry, all in the wild. Wow.
yes,
That's
yes,
incredible.
so it really was. So you go to these national parks and it's as if you're just driving around in their home, in their wilderness. So fortunately, we had a guide, Ugandan guide, so he knew the whole place and he was really good at just maneuvering us around. And the whole trip was planned. So we just had to get on the flight and then everything else was taken care of. We really didn't have to do anything. And that's why I didn't realize that we were actually going to Rwanda until I think we were on the flight going to Uganda. I realized that the last 3 days were going to be in Rwanda. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So we finished up the trip by spending 3 days in Rwanda, and it was kind of not very well planned compared to the 10 days we had just spent in Uganda. It was like they didn't really know much about where to take us and where would be good places to, just simple stuff like go have lunch. I kept pulling out my cousin, like, let's go outside and walk around and get a feeling of, the people here and what this place is about. And we didn't really didn't get it. So on the last night, I told my aunt, we're gonna have to go have a drink somewhere. Like I need a sense of local, I need to get a sense of the people who actually live here. And she didn't want to go, it was too late. And I was like, you know what? I'm either gonna go alone, you're gonna send me alone, your niece, in a foreign country to a bar she doesn't know, surrounded by people she doesn't know, or you're gonna come with me. And she was like, okay, fine, we'll go have a drink. So we go to this place, very randomly recommended by the woman and the receptionist. And then I meet a guy that I know from Denmark at this bar.
Oh,
And it was super random. He is Rwandan, but he lived a year in Denmark. So we had the same favorite bars. We kind of knew each other, but we didn't know each other that well. But obviously, when you kind of know somebody and then you meet abroad, now you're best friends, right? That's it's like, what? Here? Oh my goodness, is that really you? And it was just like that kind of encounter where both of us were just super shocked to see each other there because it was so unexpected.
wow.
And ended up sending my family back to the hotel so they could go sleep. And he took me out and we went and had drinks with him and his friends. And at some point where I had gotten a little bit tipsy, he
Mhm.
asked me, so how do you like Rwanda? And I was like, I don't, because I have no idea. Like, I feel like we've been in this cocoon for the last 3 days. We haven't seen anything that felt like, I don't know Rwanda at all. I feel like we've been here for 3 days, but I have no idea. And then he said, you should come back. I'll link you up with more of my friends and we'll make sure you always have someone to have lunch and dinner with. Like, just come and we'll show you around. And I have a feeling, because he was married to a Danish woman, that he thought, okay, Danes, they will say yes, but never actually do it. That's kind of our thing. We'll be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll come. And you'll never hear from us again. But I came back 2 months later. I was like, I need to see what this place is about.
Mm.
Also because
Mm.
there's a thing about Rwanda, even though I didn't really get much of a feeling of the place in general when I visited the first time, Rwanda is incredibly safe and very green and very clean. And I just thought, if this is a cool place, this is definitely a place I could live, and especially traveling alone as a woman, safety was a really big deal for me. That's something I really prioritized. And I really wanted to leave Denmark. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna get on a flight and I'm gonna come back. So I
And
came back to
having someone there and a potential network already there is pretty awesome. Yeah.
exactly. It was like handed to me on a silver platter. So I went back and he did exactly what he had promised. He linked me up with friends and I got to see the place from a whole different angle. And that's when I just fell in love with the place. I only had about a week the second time. And I was like, I need to come back here. So I went back home. I started applying for jobs in Rwanda and I was like, I need to find something. And it was crickets. I didn't hear anything back from anyone.
Were you in
So I thought,
coaching at the time, Rebecca, or?
no,
Mhm.
I was working for a bank, buying market data from stock exchanges back in Denmark. I had
Okay.
never thought about setting up a coaching business at this point.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I wanted a job. I wanted stable income. I wanted security. So I
Hmm.
applied for these jobs and I thought, maybe the reason that they're not getting back to me is because I'm not there. So let me just book another trip to Rwanda and then I'll just let everyone know that I'm around and we can meet. I'll invite them for coffee and we'll see how it goes. And I can get some connections and maybe I'll get a job.
Wow.
So I booked a trip. I booked another trip. This was 2 months later again. So now this was in June. It was my third visit to Rwanda that year. So yeah, so I came back and it was the same. I reached out to everyone, let them know I was coming to Rwanda. It was crickets. I didn't hear from anyone. But I was gonna go anyway. I had the ticket, so I went and I managed to get a meeting with someone who pretty much told me, we can't hire you because you don't have any of the needed skills, so we can't help you get a work permit. So if you don't have skills that they believe that they can't find locally, they're not going to give you the job. They're going to give the job to someone who's there local. So it's like an employment policy, which makes sense. But I was just so deflated at this point. I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up having drinks with this Danish woman that I got her number through her mom that I got through my contact at Bloomberg it was like a whole, yeah. So I ended up texting this woman, hey, can we meet for a drink or a coffee? Like, I got your number from your mom. It was super awkward. We went and she's like, sure, I'm having some after work drinks with some colleagues. You can come and join us. So I did. And there's an Italian woman who said, oh, you're not going to get a job from Denmark here. I mean, you have to be here. So what you're going to do is you're going to go home and quit your job and get here, and you start volunteering. And then through your volunteering, you'll get enough contacts and local knowledge for you to get a job. And everyone else around the table were like, that is not, like, you can't tell people to do that. That's not a safe or secure strategy at all. And she was
Yeah.
like, several people have done it. You should totally do that. So I did. I went home and quit my job and packed my bags.
Wow. You're so
And,
adventurous.
but the thing is also, every single step had been put out in front of me. Like the friend and the network that I made, I found randomly on a walk a woman who offered me a place to stay when I first came. I met randomly the guy who helped me get a volunteership. So it was everything just fell in place. So it's like, who am I to tell the universe no? It was like, the stones have been put out in front of me. I just got to start walking. So I did. I quit my job, came, and after some months, close to when my savings were running out, I ended up finding a really, really nice job. And then I stayed in that for a bit, and that kept me through COVID as well. So I ended up having stable income while a lot of people didn't, and everything around it was just really handed to me. And one day I was like, I gotta quit this job and set up my coaching business. So I did. And yeah, that was the very long story of how I ended up in Rwanda. But yeah, that's fine. I've been here for more than 5 years now.
Wow, good for you. I mean, I honestly don't know anyone else that's even been to Rwanda. So just like hear this story of you just picking up your whole life and moving because someone you've never met before said you can do it. Like I just love how adventurous you are and how you just trusted the flow of how it all was just landing in place at the right time.
Yes.
Um, and it all worked out. So
Yeah.
congratulations. That's amazing and awesome.
Thank you. And I used to really not be adventurous. So I think when I started out, saying a lot of my coaching coming from around transformations is also me going from being the kind of person who could never do something like that to then becoming the kind of person for whom it's the only thing I could do at that moment has really impacted the way that I coach and my experiences that I bring into my coaching. So transformation for me it's such a crucial process for all of us to go through to build the kind of life that we want and love.
Mm.
It built the foundation. I gave my first TEDx this year. It was called Why People Build a Life They Don't Love. And obviously my story had a lot to do with that as well. And just transforming ourselves into the people who can live that life, that we love and desire.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. And congratulations on your first TEDx. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Must have been an amazing experience as well.
It was fun. It was fun. I told myself I wasn't going to do another one for a while because it's a lot of work memorizing the whole thing. But now I have a second one coming up in Tanzania in November. So I guess I couldn't wait.
Oh, that's so good. So
Hmm.
when did you get into coaching? Right after COVID? Did you have like an epiphany or a pivotal moment when you said, okay, I want to step into something new?
Actually, yes. During COVID, actually, yeah. When COVID came, I started with my coaching certificates and such. I started forcing my friends to be coached by me so I could practice. But there
Yeah.
was definitely a moment. I had a moment where two people within very short, I think it was within a week of each other, from Denmark reached out to me and said, I have some things going on in my life and I would love to talk to you about it. Do you have time? Like, can we set up a call and have a chat? And this was more than a year after. Well, it was close to a year after I had left Denmark. And I thought, why don't you just talk to people who are around? You know, not that I didn't want to help them, but I thought, why would you want to talk to me about it? I'm not even there. And that's when
Mm.
I realized that I'm just quite naturally a coach. You know, I just, it comes very natural to me to help people through things, and realizing that other people value that in me as well, that it felt like something special that people would still reach out to me for it, even though, I mean, it felt like more than just like a friend, you know, it felt like they really valued my inputs and my insights and my supporting them through their decision making and such. And then I thought, you know, I think there's something here. And my mom, she was super into personal development as well. So when I was a kid, she planted a lot of seeds
Mm.
that took a while for them to grow. But I did create this way of thinking that includes a lot of reflection and introspection, and putting words and things and being very mindful about how I talk to people and what impact my thoughts have on who I am. And it took a very long time for me to realize that not everyone had been so lucky to have a mom who would teach them something like that. You know, I thought it was the norm for most of my life. I thought everyone thought like that. And there was this time when I think it was around 18, and I was going through a breakup. I was so, you know, teenage hormone heartbroken, right? So it was incredibly painful.
Yeah.
And my two best friends, they came by and then they asked me how I was dealing with it. And I said, oh, but you know what? I just realized that I keep obsessing over him by constantly thinking of him. So now I've just decided I'm not going to think about him anymore. So every time my thoughts start, you know, thinking about him, I'm just going to stop and think about something else. And that has been really helpful. And they said, oh, you can't do that's, you can't decide what your thoughts are. I mean, that's, you can't do that. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do that? Of course you can do, you can just decide to have different thoughts. And that whole confrontation of you know, whether or not it's possible to manage your own thoughts, taught me, you know, that not everyone are just by default aware of that. So it
Right.
definitely was one of the moments where I realized, oh, I have actually been taught how to do something that not everyone has been taught. And yeah, I even after that, it took me many years to realize that it's not just a given for most people. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And you mentioned your mom. Was she helping people professionally in this way or in personal development, or was it her own journey of personal development that you got to witness?
Oh, both definitely. So my mom, when I was a kid, she graduated as a doctor. She was a doctor, but she hated the sight of blood. So she decided to never practice. And instead she set up like an advertising business or something within pharmaceuticals, I think. I don't really remember the details because I was a kid, but she set up her own business. Everyone told her she couldn't do it. She did, and she became wealth, like rich. By the age of 30, she had a very successful business. And eventually she just pivoted into something else. She started more like a therapist kind of coaching business, though she wasn't a licensed therapist. So it was, yeah, it was more towards coaching, but it was more about people who are going through something very emotional that they wanted support with. So it wasn't professional coaching in that sense, but she did set up a business doing that. So yeah, I saw, and then she had her own journey, and her own journey also very spiritual actually. So there's a lot of parallels between her journey and mine, even though I think I might have been a little bit late compared to her. I rejected the spiritual approach for a very long time.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I didn't really accept that part. I felt like she was trying to push it on me, and as a teenager, you just reject whatever your mom is trying to push on you, you know?
Yeah.
It took a while, but yeah, and it was so interesting to see because a lot of the books that I'm reading now are very similar to things that she told me, you know, when I was very young. So it's really interesting to see. Yeah.
It definitely sounds like you inherited her gumption, her
Yes.
audacity,
Yeah.
which is such an amazing trait, you know, especially as a woman and in her day, even more so, I guess, right? That's quite astounding that she did that against, you know, what everyone else said and became so successful so early in
Absolutely. She was really, when I look back at who she was really incredible. She had the
yeah.
guts to stand up and step out and say things that a lot of people would disagree with.
Mm,
Especially back in the 90s, it's the way that we're talking about gender equality and how, women should have, equal rights and an equal place and all of these things. It was very, very different environment back then. And I
yeah.
think there's many places in the world, if you come out and you say like you're a feminist, people assume that you hate men or that it has, they completely misunderstand what that means.
Oh yeah.
And it was even worse back then. She would receive, and this was before social media. I don't remember this specifically, but my aunt told her that like people had put dog poop in our mailbox, and like, sending her hate mail and stuff like that. So she was definitely, creating impact that was received in different ways.
Yeah. I know. Oh my gosh, that's so true. We still run up against that. We were talking about that earlier, right? It's like it it doesn't have feminism is not anti-men, or at least it doesn't certainly doesn't have to be. It doesn't inherently mean that. It's about embracing our strengths, our individual strengths, and you know, coming together and it mutually supporting one another in our different identities. So yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting to have that conversation early, so early.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though I wasn't in a place where I could fully understand and take in everything that she was and everything that she said. Like I mentioned to you, when I'm out now and I'm sometimes sharing messages and then I find something that my mom said 25 years ago and it's like the exact same thing that she would say, it's just incredible because even now there's a lot of pushback, which
Yeah.
is which is kind of interesting. And I think there's something about when people feel threatened, it doesn't take a lot for them to perceive everything as a threat. So if
Mhm.
you think like, oh, my masculine values, I'm supposed to be number one and the number one in the household, and I'm supposed to be all of this, and someone else comes and says, oh, but my feminine values are equally valuable and important, they may see that as oh, are you trying to say they're more important? But it's like, no, you're not listening. I'm saying they're equally important. And as long as yours have to be more important, there's not room for mine to be equally important. So
Mm.
it's very sensitive with some people to even
Yeah.
have this conversation because they get defensive. And I think whenever you're talking to someone and they get defensive, it's very hard to even have the conversation because defensiveness will just create a wall, right? When you'll be talking to a wall with somebody who can't hear what you're saying because the wall is so thick, and you're just trying to explain that there's no such thing as trying to pull you down or tell you that you're less than. It's just, I feel like there should also be room for me and what is important to me, right? It's almost
Yeah.
like if you see this in a relationship, if we end up having something that we get triggered by or defensive by, and you're not open to look at it and have the conversation around it, it becomes very hard for there to be room for both people. And I think it's similar in that conversation.
hmm Yeah, I think of it almost like a dance, right? Like if there's a
Mm.
man and woman dancing, it's like they both have their part in the dance and they both have their strength and there's beauty in each part. And it doesn't have to mean they're competing, they're a team, they're working together, they're equal but different. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. Because the dance would not be the same without either of them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'd love to hear a little bit, like maybe just a nugget or two from the TED Talk that you did. Um, like why is it that people create these lives that they actually don't align with, or maybe they know that, maybe they don't. But yeah, why do we do that, do you
Yeah,
think?
so the main message was that we are programmed not to. We are programmed to live a life that is the smart life to live, and we're programmed to live a life that is more aligned with what previous generations thought were good and smart to do. But the world is so dynamic now. Like what we want to do could be very, very different and still very successful. And the way that we're constantly changing, there's constantly new opportunity. But if you're in this mindset of I need to, as I said, starting out, like I have to get a job, I need to, get a degree, I have to go out and I have to do this, and I need to be only like a doctor or a pharmacist or an engineer or a lawyer, and only those are acceptable ways of living. Now you have a very narrow tunnel vision towards what is a good life. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is that what is a good life for somebody here is not necessarily what is a good life for somebody there. And if someone has programmed you into being the kind of person who's very focused on a way of life that is not meant for them, then we do all of these things to create this life that someone else taught us that we have to live, but it doesn't create any sense of fulfillment. So if we grow up with this, all of this narrative by caretakers or teachers or role models, or the movies back in the day that we grew up with, or the music that told us we need to have this and this and that to create status, and all you want is status, or you want whatever it is, and this is how you're supposed to get it. It doesn't teach us how to get in touch with our, our inner creative child that would just do things for the sole reason that we love doing them. We
Mm-hmm.
don't we are so focused on the results and on the end and on getting here that we forget to enjoy the process. And if we can't enjoy the process, I mean, the life is the process, right?
Right.
Constantly running for the next and the next and the next, and I have to do this, and then you achieve it, and it's like a deflated balloon because you thought it was going to feel different. You thought it was going to give you that sense of achievement and accomplishment and the result. We finally got it. No, actually, there's so much more for us to get because now we're here. We want to get here. Okay, let's put back the running shoes and start running in this direction. And we never just stop and review and look, am I actually enjoying this? Is this actually what I want my life to be? Or am I still creating a life based on what I grew up being told a good life would be? So I love doing this. I love paying attention to these little moments of joy that just happens randomly throughout the day, just to remind myself of how much I just love life in general. Whether it's my dogs. My dogs have been incredibly quiet. Usually they're out here barking at nearby where I am whenever I'm doing recordings. Seeing a butterfly, seeing a flower grow somewhere where a flower wouldn't usually grow, or just
Yeah.
being in the presence of someone who makes you smile, or just feeling the, a breeze on a hot summer day, or something like, just stopping and just enjoying life for a little bit so that we can remind ourselves of what happiness and enjoyment and joy actually feels like. And
Yeah.
when we realize what that feels like, we can use that in our decision making. Okay, I'm here. I have two different directions to go in. Which one gives me that sense of a glimmer? Which one makes me actually feel happy? And we're not taught to do that. We're not taught how to make decisions based on what feels good. We're only taught to make decisions based on what is smart. What is a smart thing to do? What brings
That's
me
so
closer to
true.
the result I want, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what the TEDx was about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so true. And I definitely went through that journey myself where one day I just woke up and was like, I'm not in the moment. I'm not in the present. I'm constantly looking toward the future and the next goal. And if I'm not happy now, right? What's the guarantee I'm going to be happy when I reach that goal? There is none. And it's probably not going to make me happy because it's always now. It's always now. So
Right.
let me focus on being happy now. That's all
Right.
that's all I've got.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
completely changes life, doesn't it? Just being present and really just enjoying and finding that sense of peace and just, yeah, yeah, it changes life fully.
It really does. And after all, like each of us, we're the expert and authority on our life path, right? It's like, yeah, there are many people that have been successful in the world and they can show us what they did to do that. And we can follow, we can emulate role models and follow strategies, but ultimately we are the sole authority on our own lives. And like you said, and we go through so many years of schooling and we learn about all these, figures in history and people who accomplish great things, but we're not often encouraged to turn inward and reflect on what's important to us and what gives us pleasure and what gets us excited and to follow that inspiration
Yeah.
more than anything, because that's really what matters.
And I think that's such a good point because we also see that very much in the coaching industry, right? We see all of these coaches who are out here making, all of these big businesses and they teach us exactly what to do and what to say and how to do it. And when I
Mhm.
first started coaching, I was very much about, okay, I have to learn how to sell this and do this and package that and create these. And I need a membership and I need a course and I need a mastermind and I need an opt-in funnel and I need a webinar and I need all of these things because this is what they all taught me. And I was
Yeah.
teaching that other people had taught me, and I thought this is really cool, learning these things, and I would teach that to other people, and I would never just sit down and think, okay, but what have I done and accomplished and achieved in my life that where I actually have, you know, this is what I did, and this is
Mm,
how I did it. Instead, it would be like, oh, this is what this person did, and this person did, and that person did, and they did it like this, and you can do it too. And there was no embodiment, right? There was no embodiment of it. And it took
yeah.
me such time to really find my own voice in all of that because it can be so overwhelming and there's such high standards. Oh, you did a launch and you didn't make $20,000 on your first launch. Well, what's wrong with you? It's like, wait a minute. Why is it again that I want to be a coach? Why is it again that I want to create impact? Why is it again that I want to help people through this pain that they're feeling? And what pain is it that I really feel like I can help them with? And how can my
Yeah.
story be useful to people? And it took me a long time of just stressing through all of that, and then Alexandra Hormozi has all of this free content on how to generate leads. Let's study it all and create lead magnets. And it was, oh, okay, wait a second.
I can so relate. Yes. Yes.
Breathe, find your core, find your soul, yeah, and just start speaking to that. And when you start speaking to that, it was like, it was
Hmm.
quite funny how I saw suddenly people were asking me questions and they started reaching out and they're like, I've been paying attention and I've seen what you're doing. And, from the most random places asking me, how can I work with you? And I thought, okay, wait, this is new. This didn't happen when I was teaching Alex Hormozi strategies, you know?
All about
Yeah.
the embodiment. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it really is. And we're not
Yeah.
taught how to find that, right? As you said, we're taught to look at what are other people doing and how can you mirror that. And I think it's great using other people's as mirrors, but more in the sense of what does this say about me? Right? I'm looking at someone who's doing something differently. What can that teach me about what I do? What can it teach me about the assumptions that I've been making and the judgments that I've been making and how I make decisions and what created this person that is there now? It's great to use mirrors, but it doesn't mean that you should necessarily have to go and do the things that they do, you know?
Right.
Right.
Right. Always using your own self as the ultimate litmus test of what resonates and what is in alignment. Where a lot of times, yeah, like same thing here. When I started out, I just kind of like I used other people as sort of a crutch as what I should do, what's the expectation. Even, when it didn't feel right, I was like, well, they know better, you know,
Yeah.
until trial and error, taught me differently that, it's all about, there's 1,000 different ways to do it. And coming back to your own voice, your own values, your own vision, and
Yeah.
embodying all of that is actually going to be far more effective and efficient.
Yes, it is so much more efficient. And I think also you're right that we're being taught to do things that doesn't sit right with us.
Hmm.
And for some people it can be really good because we don't always know if the feeling of not sitting right comes from fear or if it comes from alignment. And if it comes from fear, then that is not a very good place to make decisions from, right? So
Yeah.
for some of us, and especially for me personally, I had to learn how to navigate what feels right and what feels just uncomfortable, because
Right.
discomfort can be a really good thing, testing out thing. If you only want to sit in your comfort zone, you're not going to get a lot done. Yet
Exactly.
if it just doesn't, it feels wrong. This is just not what I want to tell people. And I had to go through that several times. I had to go through actually saying things and teaching things where I'm like, there's something a little bit off about this. It doesn't really sit right with me. Before I started to really learn the difference between, oh, right now I'm just uncomfortable because it's scary and it's new, and then okay, this is actually just doesn't feel right to me. But yeah, I think it comes through experience, like you said, it's trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Live and learn. That's part of it. Part of
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and I think actually many of us, and I mean, when I first started coaching, I didn't think that I had done anything that people would want to learn from, because I took everything kind of for granted. So all of the overcoming of depression and eating disorders and social anxieties and fears and creating a new life for myself and moving to a different continent and betting on myself and creating all of this transformation, I was like, oh, but who would want that, right? Who could possibly learn
That's crazy.
anything from from what I have? I don't have anything to teach people. And I think because it's so deeply ingrained in us, sometimes we forget that there's a gift there. There's something that we can teach. So it
Yeah.
was every time I learned something new that was like, oh, this is cool, this is impressive. Let me teach somebody else that, because that's when I saw the value in it. I think sometimes we forget that we all carry so much value. We all carry so much life experience. We all carry so
Right.
many thoughts that we've had and arguments we've had with ourselves and information that we've gathered and wisdom that we've created. And it can be very overwhelming for new coaches, especially to figure out how do I sit and figure out what to teach people, because I don't know anything. That's what it feels like at first. I don't know anything. How can I teach anyone anything? But
Hmm.
we all have something.
Yeah. It's just learning to tap into it and to trust it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
put words.
articulate it too. It's,
Yes,
about articulating and being able to communicate the value of your own experience is a big lesson.
absolutely.
So how do you work with clients now, Rebecca? Do you do one-on-one, group coaching?
So I have different things. I started doing leadership trainings based on personal development for corporates here. So in that sense, I would do, usually I would go join someone's leadership retreat, for an organization here, deliver a training based on how do you figure out who you are and why did you become the leader that you are today. Um, how
Hmm.
did you learn how to model leadership? It's pretty much the same, right? You identify what is there, you figure out where it came from, and then you find out who do I actually want to be, and then you start closing the gap between the two, and then it comes down to transformation. And that's a transformation framework that I teach in every area of life,
Hmm.
including in leadership. Like, what kind of leadership do you grow up with? What do you consider leadership, when it comes to who do you want to be as a leader, but also who are you automatically as a leader? So when I was first appointed leader, 4 months after I graduated from business school, I embodied leadership the way that I had grown up, in terms of this is how we solve problems. We solve problems by ignoring them and not talking about them, right? So that was the leader I became. And I saw very similar patterns later on with a lot of people. They have a bit of a military style to leadership, right? There needs to be distance and you just need to follow orders and you shouldn't be asking questions and you shouldn't be challenging us, because
Hmm.
that's what they were taught growing up, right? You should sit down and let the adults handle it. And it's
Yeah.
just not an effective way to lead people, right? So I've kind of just, I teach them my framework, and we do it in the context of leadership, and it creates a lot of very interesting conversations and a lot of introspection and reflection,
Beautiful.
which is so much fun. It's really so much fun. I enjoy that very much. So I do those. Then I've also started recently taking on some one-on-one work, mostly with people who feel like they're on this path of having discovered this life that I've built is not the one I want.
Mm-hmm.
I need and want something different, and I lack clarity on what that is. I want to figure out what direction can I go to? How can I find fulfillment and love and joy in my life? So I will be doing some one-on-one. I have both a one-off session where we just sit and we gain clarity and gain direction, and you go on your way and come back whenever you need some more support, and then also a container where it's like, okay, let's go through the process. So yeah, I've been doing different types of coaching with different people, but all of
Amazing.
it comes down to who are you and who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Yeah.
Beautiful. Love that. Love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing today, Rebecca. You have such a powerful story, and I just love your gumption and your zest for life. And I definitely want to, you made me want to visit Rwanda. So,
Please. I keep telling people you should come. There's so much to do. It's a tiny country. You can go to the national park and see the lions and the elephants. You can go up to the volcanoes and see the twin lakes and just these beautiful hills and scenery. You can go see the gorillas. We have one of the oldest rainforests in Africa, where you can see, go hike with waterfalls and everything. It's just incredible. And it's a tiny country, so you can move very quickly from each of
wow,
these places. Yes, yes, everyone should come to Rwanda.
that sounds awesome. I'm so glad that you've landed there and that you've really created a life that you love. That is amazing and so inspiring. So, Rebecca, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about working with you?
Yeah, so I would just suggest to send an email at rh@Rebecca-Hansen. Is it a dash one? The hyphen, Rebecca-Hansen. Sometimes I forget English versus Danish. Yeah, so rh@Rebecca-Hansen.com, or find me at I'm Rebecca Hansen at on Instagram. Send me a message and we'll take it from there.
Amazing, amazing. And I'll put those in the show notes as well. Well,
Wonderful.
thank you everyone for listening today. And thank you, Rebecca, for being an amazing guest. It was a pleasure. And I'm so glad we connected. And we'll see you next time on the Feminine Frequency. Stay tuned.